Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyerfootballnews.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Keep in mind, we sell premium picks at dwyervip.com. It's week 8 of the NFL, but first, let's talk about week 7, the free pick we posted here online. In that pick, we recommended that you take the under in last week's Washington Redskin New York Giant game. Now, at the time I made the video, the over-under number was 50. Even with the 2 touchdowns in the last 2 minutes of that game, if you took that bet, you were covered. You didn't win, but you didn't lose. It was a push. The 2 touchdowns pushed that game to 50. But if you were fortunate enough to get the under closer to game time, if you got the 50.5, 51, or 51.5 that the casinos were offering at kickoff of that game, then you actually won on that bet. One thing is certain, though, you didn't lose on the under, right? Because the 50 was in the low part of the over-under range being offered by the casinos. Okay, so you either got a push or you won that bet outright. I'm not going to discuss the 3-point spread plays that I'm offering on dwyervip.com, but what I am going to say is looking at teams, just trends over the last 2 weeks, we're going to find out a lot about the Dallas Cowboys when they play a team they've beaten already this year, the New York Giants, and Dallas this weekend. Understand, 2 weeks ago, the Cowboys, in a game they lost to the Baltimore Ravens, actually put up more than 480 yards of total offense and got 30 first downs. To put that in perspective, they outgained the Baltimore Ravens by more than 150 yards. And they also had 11 more first downs than the Baltimore Ravens. They had a time of possession that was roughly twice what the Baltimore Ravens' time of possession was. The Cowboys dominated that game. Unfortunately, the domination did not extend to the scoreboard. Well, a couple of things have happened since then. That was week 6. In week 7, the Cowboys played a Carolina Panthers team that, quite frankly, this year isn't getting it done. And even though the Cowboys won that game, they struggled in it. Right? The Cowboys had 18 first downs. Carolina had 18 first downs. Right? The Cowboys had 312 total yards. Carolina had more total yards. They had 328 total yards. Right? The Cowboys may have gotten the win. They scored less than 20 points in getting the win. More troubling is the fact that Baltimore, the team that the Cowboys statistically dominated in week 6, that looked like a statement game, got exposed in week 7 by the Houston Texans. Now, I know the Texans are an elite team, but understand that the Texans got more than twice the yardage of the Baltimore Ravens in that game. The Texans, in a 60-minute game, had a time of possession that was something like 16 minutes greater than the Baltimore Raven time of possession, right? The Texans converted, believe it or not, 8 times on 3rd down. The Texans had more than twice the number of first downs that the Baltimore Ravens had. So you have to ask yourself, this Cowboy performance against the Ravens in week 6, was it because the Cowboys are talented? Or was it because the Baltimore Ravens right now are slumping? That's something that you need to keep an eye on. Also, let's also consider the emerging offensive dominance of the Green Bay Packers. You just heard me talk about how Houston dominated Baltimore in Week 7. Well, keep in mind, Green Bay beat Houston in Houston in Week 6. And in doing so, Green Bay put up more than 400 yards of total offense. Well, they followed that up last week against an excellent defensive team, St. Louis, in St. Louis. Keep in mind, these are road games for Green Bay. But yet, Green Bay last week also put up more than 400 yards of total offense. For all of Green Bay's problems, and they have a few, right? Charles Woodson is out. You need to take a look at what Aaron Rodgers is doing or has done the last 2 weeks. It's exemplary. That Green Bay offense is humming. Let's also pay close attention this week to the offense of the San Francisco 49ers. You know, Frank Gore, quite frankly, is having a Pro Bowl year. What I encourage readers to do here is to take a look at Frank Gore's yards per carry. They're off the page. But curiously enough, Frank Gore isn't getting the ball a lot. Now that might be strategic. It might be Coach Harbaugh trying to save Frank Gore, who has had some injury problems in the past, for later in the season when the games will matter more. Late season games to determine who wins the division, to determine playoff seeding, and then of course the playoffs and hopefully the Super Bowl, right? But let me tell you, without Frank Gore rushing the football 25 times, without that team really revving it up, they're struggling offensively. 2 weeks ago was the game in which they got manhandled by the New York Giants in their house, right? That game was in San Francisco. Then, of course, last week, granted, they were playing a great defense, no question about it. The Seattle Seahawks are a great defense. Look at their numbers statistically, right? But, let's face it, San Francisco struggled offensively, right? Certain parts of that team are shut off. Where's Randy Moss, right? That team isn't an offensive juggernaut. And so, given the high expectations, we're talking about a team that made it to the NFC Championship game last year. Given the high expectations, and I can tell you out here in the Bay, people are expecting the Niners to go further than the NFC Championship game. You really need to be just a little concerned about what's happening with that San Francisco offense going into this big game this weekend against the Arizona Cardinals. Keep in mind, at stake is the NFC West, right? That's another storyline that we need to think about. Also, let me say this. For all of the grief, and I do mean grief, and it comes with the territory, that Mark Sanchez has had to endure from the New York press, right? We keep hearing that this guy, who has led his team to multiple AFC Championship games, right? We keep hearing questions about whether this guy is even the best quarterback on his team. Should he be starting? Whenever Sanchez has a bad game, we always start hearing about how Tim Tebow should be in there sharing the workload more. Well, let me just say this. Last week, the Jets put up more than 400 yards of offense against the New England Patriots in New England. Mark Sanchez actually passed for more passing yards in that game than Tom Brady. He was throwing the ball deep. Let's see if the Jets, who, let's face it, are always under fire from the New York press, right? 1 week, Rex Ryan can't coach. The next week, Mark Sanchez can't play. You hear that the team doesn't have talent. They don't have playmakers. I'll tell you what, the Jets have a number of wins this year, and they certainly were competitive last week in New England. Let's see exactly what the Jets bring to the table this week. Okay? Let me know what you think. Let me know what storylines you have in mind. Leave your comments for me here online, and of course, for premium picks, visit us at DwyerVIP.com, and for just football stories, injury reports, fantasy trends, who to start, who to sit, things like that, visit us at DwyerFootballNews.com. Thanks for watching.